In the trenches of World War I, machines are buried that look like a nightmare. Giant, rusted structures with mangled tracks. Their shapes so alien, it's hard to believe they were ever real. The air around them carries the smell of century-old dampness and iron decay. These are the ghosts of the First Armored War. Engineers tried to forge insane ideas into metal, creating weapons to break the deadlock of the front lines. But reality was brutal. Many were so massive they drowned in the mud before even seeing the enemy. Others were so heavy their own steel frames cracked under the strain. Each one was a lesson, written in rust and failure. We are going to uncover the story behind these engineering monsters, and the last machine on this list is so strange, most refuse to believe it ever existed. We started with the mystery of rusted monsters, but amidst that madness, an elegant solution was born that changed everything. In 1917, Renault showed the world the FT17, the first truly modern tank. Its genius was not brute force. It was a single revolutionary idea, a fully rotating turret, 360 degrees of controlled destruction. For the first time, a tank didn't need to turn its entire body to aim. The battlefield came to it. Its weight was just 6.5 tons, the equivalent of a heavy pickup truck today. But in a war of giants, this lightweight machine was a breakthrough. Inside, it was a two-man operation in a steel coffin. The driver is crammed into a tiny space, his hands locked on the control levers. Above him, the gunner is a world away. He grips the traverse wheel. The entire battlefield pivots before his eyes. The air is thick with boiling heat from the engine, a deafening roar that makes communication impossible, a constant violent clang of steel on steel. This layout, engine in the back, crew in the middle, armament on top, became the blueprint for every tank that followed. The FT-17 was small, but it could go where the land battleships got bogged down, slipping through forests and shattered villages to support the infantry. It proved that smart design was more lethal than sheer size. A chilling testament to its operational life was found decades later, buried in a forest. A perfectly preserved FT-17, a time capsule from the war with its two crew members still inside. But while the French created their elegant FT-17, the British went a different way. In the same year, 1917, they unleashed a true 28-ton monster onto the battlefields, the Mark V. This wasn't about elegance, it was about brute force. This machine was built for one purpose: to cross the hellscape of no man's land. Its iconic rhomboid shape was engineered to span wide trenches, its tracks gripping one edge as its nose reached for the other. It weighed as much as 5 adult elephants, crushing barbed wire and earth under its massive weight. Inside, it was a different kind of hell. 8 men were packed into a steel box with a roaring 13-liter engine. The noise was deafening, a constant physical assault that forced the crew to communicate with hand signals and screams. They called it the moving coffin. Operating it was a feat of raw strength. To change gear, the driver wrestled with a massive heavy lever. Often, another crewman had to abandon his post, throwing his full weight alongside the driver. The tank would then lurch forward with a violent, bone-jarring shudder. Survival was a victory. After the war, many were abandoned, but the ghost of their power remained. One was found years later, half buried near a French village. Its side sponson was still loaded with live ammunition. If the British Mark V was a coffin on tracks, then France's very first tank was more of a clumsy experiment. Its design was so strange, soldiers didn't know what to expect. This was the Schneider CA-1, born in 1916, a 13-ton steel box built to smash through barbed wire and cross the churned-up hell of no man's land. But it had one fatal design flaw: its nose. A low, jutting beak designed to push things over. In reality, it turned the tank into a trap. The machine would lumber towards a German trench, its engine roaring. But instead of climbing the far bank, the nose would dig straight into the earth. The sound was a horrifying grind of metal against dirt. The tracks would spin uselessly in the air. The tank was now a stationary target, helpless. Inside, the problems compounded. The 75mm main gun was mounted on the right side, creating a severe imbalance. Driving it was like handling a car where one wheel weighs twice as much as the others. Turning was a clumsy, lurching affair. The 11mm armor offered little more than psychological comfort, easily pierced by anything heavier than a rifle bullet. And at the Battle of Chemin-des-Dames, this flawed design became a catastrophe. 132 tanks deployed, 76 destroyed or abandoned. Most never even reached the enemy line, stuck in the very trenches they were meant to cross. More historic than effective, but it was a necessary step. This awkward machine proved, through its own failure, that something far more powerful was needed to break the stalemate of the front. The first tanks were clumsy experiments, so France answered with the Saint-Chamond, a machine that pushed ambition to a new level but paid a heavy price for it. On paper, it was a breakthrough, a heavy assault gun designed to shatter the front line. The reality was a 23-ton engineering catastrophe. Its body was almost 9 meters long, the length of a modern city bus, but its tracks were dangerously short, tucked under the center of the massive hull. The result was a fatal imbalance. On the battlefield, this design flaw turned the tank into a trap. The machine approaches a trench. Its long nose dips forward, burying itself deep into the opposite bank. The tracks lift completely off the ground, spinning uselessly in the air. A perfect target. Inside, the rigid suspension was a torture device. Every bump, every shell crater threw the 9-man crew against the hard steel walls. The 75mm main gun was mounted directly in the nose, making the entire vehicle a clumsy, unbalanced battering ram that couldn't steer effectively. It was a bold idea, undone by basic physics. Its performance in combat was disastrous. Many were simply abandoned after getting stuck. Decades later, one was discovered in a forest in France. A steel ghost, its cannon still aimed at nothing. Frozen in time, a monument to a spectacular failure. The French struggled with a crew of 9 inside their Saint-Chamond. The Germans decided that wasn't the limit, creating their own answer, a mobile fortress where they crammed 18 soldiers. 18 men! That's more than the crew of 2 modern armored vehicles. An entire platoon sealed inside a single 33-ton steel box named the A7V. It was Germany's only mass-produced tank of the war, and it was less a vehicle and more a human pressure cooker. Inside, it was organized chaos. 2 drivers wrestled with the controls, fighting the machine itself. Gunners hunched over 6 machine guns crammed against the hull, and the mechanics were trapped, working directly beside 2 roaring engines. The air was a toxic soup, a deafening roar mixed with the sharp stink of gunpowder, sweat, and superheated oil. This wasn't a war machine, it was a factory floor from hell. From the outside, the 30mm of frontal armor offered protection, but that steel shell also trapped the noise, the heat, and the fumes. The greatest threat was inside. Germany poured immense resources into creating this land battleship, pushing its massive crew to their absolute limit. All that engineering, all that human suffering, for just 20 machines. While German crews in the A7V suffocated from heat and exhaust fumes, Italian engineers asked a different question. What if a 40-ton monster could be comfortable? Their Fiat 2000 wasn't just big, it was surprisingly intelligent. The machine weighed 40 tons, moved by a 240 horsepower engine. 10 men worked inside. But unlike the cramped, chaotic steel boxes of the era, the Italians designed an organized workspace. The commander sat high above the battlefield inside the world's first fully rotating turret on a heavy tank, a revolving fortress. Below him, the gun crew had a small but revolutionary advantage: mechanical ventilation, a simple system of fans. It pulled fresh air in, it pushed toxic fumes out. This small detail changed everything. In the hellscape of a tank interior, amidst the roar of the engine and the thunder of the cannon, the 10-man crew could do something most tankers couldn't. They could breathe. Yet this technological marvel never fired a shot in Europe. Its true test took place under the scorching sun and harsh sands of North Africa. The 40-ton Italian Fiat 2000 seemed like the absolute limit of ambition, but German engineers saw it as a starting point. What if you took the weight of 3 such machines and forged them into a single mobile fortress? This was the brutal logic behind the colossal wagon, the K-Wagen. How do you even move a steel behemoth weighing 120 tons? The mass of 20 African elephants concentrated into a single war machine. The answer was brute force, pulled from the sea. 2 massive Daimler-Benz engines, originally intended for submarines, were installed to generate a combined 650 horsepower. Inside, the roar was absolute. Communication was impossible without specialized throat microphones and headsets, as the entire hull thrummed with a constant bone-shaking vibration. This machine demanded a perfect world to operate in. Its sheer weight required solid, level ground. One patch of soft soil and the K-Wagen risked becoming its own tomb, sinking under its colossal mass. At 13 meters long, it was larger than a modern railroad car. It was a rolling citadel, and it required a citadel's crew, 27 men, an entire platoon trapped inside a dark, deafening steel box, serving as drivers, gunners, mechanics, and loaders. It was armed for total annihilation, with 4 77mm cannons and 7 machine guns, a weapon with no equal, a monster of pure destruction. But it was a monster that never left its cage. Germany completed only 2 prototypes. Neither one ever saw the battlefield. All that power, all that steel, never fired a single shot in anger. While German engineers obsessed over adding weight, their Russian counterparts believed the problem wasn't size, it was tracks. Their solution was a war machine that looked less like a tank and more like a nightmare from an amusement park. They called it the Tsar Tank. Its two front wheels stood 27 feet tall, higher than a 3-story building. The entire structure weighed 60 tons, powered by 2 Maybach engines ripped from a captured Zeppelin. 480 horsepower, ready to drive this steel behemoth across the battlefield. The plan was simple: roll over trenches, shrug off machine gun fire, and dominate. The first test was its last. The roar of the engine splits the air outside Moscow. The colossal frame lurches forward. Its giant spoked wheels claw at the ground, pulling the immense weight across the field. But the critical failure wasn't in the engines or the massive wheels. It was in the back. A single small support roller that sinks deep into soft earth. The engines scream, the steel groans. The machine is stuck, defeated by a patch of mud. It was left to rust in that exact spot for years, a 60-ton monument to a failed calculation. Yet this giant tricycle wasn't the strangest design to crawl from the trenches. That title belongs to a walking disaster made of plates and gears. If a 60-ton giant on wheels seems impractical, French engineer Louis Boireau thought wheels and tracks themselves were the mistake. He designed a machine that didn't drive, it crawled. A 30-ton behemoth of interconnected steel plates powered by a meager 80-horsepower engine. This was a personal hell for the operator. He sat in a tiny, open cage at its center. Before him, a chaotic wall of rotating panels clawed at the earth. Around him, a nightmare of exposed machinery. Uncovered gears ground metal against metal, spitting sparks just inches from his body. The noise was a physical force, a continuous, high-pitched screech that announced its position for miles. Its top speed was 1 mile per hour. That is so slow. An ordinary tortoise moves twice as fast. On the battlefield, infantry soldiers didn't need to run to keep up. They could casually walk right past the lumbering machine. This wasn't a weapon, it was a target. The design was an engineering dead end, unable to move in a straight line on uneven ground. And yet, the French military still commissioned 2 prototypes. Despite all the evidence of its failure, neither version ever saw a single day of combat. After the monster that got stuck and the nightmare that could barely crawl, the Americans in 1918 asked a different question. What if a tank was made mostly of air? This led to a project weighing just 9 tons, the skeleton tank. The logic was an engineer's dream. Heavy tanks bogged down in mud, so the solution was to remove the weight. Instead of a massive solid hull, the design was based on a minimalist steel frame. 2 long track assemblies were connected by an elevated tubular spine, and suspended between them was a tiny armored box for the crew, a machine built from emptiness. Its purpose was singular: to cross the wide trenches of the Western Front without getting trapped. On paper, it worked. The long, light frame could span gaps that would swallow a conventional tank. It was cheap to build and easy to transport, but how do you fight in a vehicle that is 90% target? The crew of 2 was crammed into a central pod, protected by just 13 millimeters of steel, barely enough to stop rifle fire. The engine, the drive shafts, the suspension, all of it was completely exposed. A single, well-placed machine gun burst could cripple it. An artillery shell landing anywhere nearby would turn the delicate frame into a tangle of twisted metal. It was a vehicle designed to conquer the battlefield's terrain, while offering its crew almost no protection from the battlefield's weapons. The project was canceled. Only 1 prototype was ever built. A rusting giant, a slow-moving nightmare, a fragile skeleton of steel. From the 60-ton Tsar Tank to the 9-ton American prototype, they all tell a single story. It's a story not just about machines, it's about a moment when human imagination violently outpaced engineering. Each one was an experiment in the chaos of total war, a physical monument to logic being pushed to its breaking point. They are fossils of thought, tangible proof of genius and desperation, fused together in a race with no rules. Now, we want to hear from you. Which machine was the most ridiculous? If you could restore one, which would it be? And which design surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. Your answer tells us what resonates. If you want to see more investigations like this, hitting the like and subscribe buttons tells the algorithm that this content matters. Thanks for watching.